research question was, to what extent are people bullied and judged for their physicality and beliefs? Some fun facts are 1 out of 4 kids are bullied or have been bullied in school at some point in time. And another fact is the teen suicide spike is like on a historical trend right now, and in 2019 is at its highest point ever. And so if we as a community do not do something about bullying now, then kids in the future will become more violent, self-harm rates will increase, and self-confidence rates will decrease. So in my research, I focused in on 2 sources from the packet. The first one was source A, involving social media, because social media is one of the biggest ways in which people are being bullied today. The second one I included was source E, the Martin Luther King letter, because African Americans were bullied and judged for what they stood for, who they were, as well as for what they looked like. So socially and historically, people are being bullied and judged as we speak. Bullying can happen in many different ways, but one of the biggest ways is through social media. In fact, in a recent study, it shows that 59% of teens have been cyberbullied in some type or form on social media. Edward Kessler, the founder and director of the Wolf Institute, says in his Social Media and the Movement of Ideas article that everyone is a publisher and everyone is a critic. I think this quote directly reflects my research question, because people are always posting their life stories and everyday life on social media, and people are constantly bashing and criticizing them, due in part to maybe being jealous or just wanting to feel superior or better than them. Through social media, violence can also occur, because you can send out a tweet at one click of a button for a location of a fight or something, so it's really easy for violence to outbreak or get gathered together on social media. And sadly, social media is also a place where people take things too far and get in fights a lot, and it is one of the main causes for suicide today. Social media is used for a place for people to post about their beliefs in everyday life, but people always want to have an advantage of bragging rights on another, and this is true throughout history. Bullying and judging people based on their beliefs isn't something that has come around recently. In fact, Martin Luther King Jr. says in his letter that we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied to a single garment of destiny. Here, MLK is explaining how him and the African Americans back in the day couldn't escape the destiny of the then superior whites because of their race. Since the African Americans weren't following the destiny of the white people, they were treated unequally, since their views of destiny were clearly different. Because of this, African Americans' self-confidence in one another was plummeting. The whites wanted to have that advantage on the African Americans, and they wanted to make the African Americans feel like they weren't good enough. As you can see here, through social media and looking back at the MLK and the African Americans, they were judged and bullied for some of the same reasons. In my second lens, I talk about the social and historical lens again, but I also incorporate the futuristic lens. In this lens, I talk about how if bullying is not stopped now, people will feel lonely, depressed, inferior to others, and suicide rates will continue to climb into the future. As I was just mentioning, people are bullied because of their beliefs. People are also bullied because of their physicality and their attributes. One instance where physical attributes were the cause of bullying was in an article by Side and Johnson. When interviewing kids, a young boy named Paul said, "I was picked on. Sometimes they pick on me and stuff. I was small." Chris said, "Wait, I wasn't proper fat, but I had a little bit on me." The woman said, "I got picked on for having big ears and having a lisp." And finally, Anna said, "It's hard to explain, people just stereotype you." So because of their physical appearance and how they were, people bullied and judged them, which caused them to feel helpless, which may relate to them acting violent in the future, as well as feeling lonely or depressed. I think this quote hits home and also relates to the MLK and the African Americans, because in both instances, people failed to recognize and embrace for the people for what made them different, but instead of doing that, they chose to bullying them because they are different. If we want these bullying issues to stop altogether, we must think of solutions to help. One solution would be by creating safe organizations and places for people to go to when they are bullied, but a limitation of this would be that it takes time and money. And also, as I mentioned before, social media is one of the biggest places where people are bullied, and that's worldwide, so it would be hard to set up organizations all over the world. Another limitation would be to create a bigger, like a law or a punishment for people being bullied. But one of the limitations of this, I'm sorry, that would be a solution. And a limitation to that would be that people really wouldn't take that seriously as bullying has been going on forever. Because bullying is a worldwide epidemic today, solutions like these will have to be discussed and implemented sooner rather than later if we want to stop bullying once and for all.
Okay, a couple of questions for you. What information did you need before you began your research, and how did that information shape your research?
So information I needed like before my research was like obviously I know about bullying, but I looked at like reasons as to why it does happen. And so when I looked that up, like I was just on Google in the beginning, like at the very beginning. And when I was on Google, I just saw like a bunch of different reasons as to why. And then as I was talking to you about my question, when you mentioned the physicality and the beliefs, that was like one of the main like topics as to why kids were bullied. So I picked those two and just ran with it because I thought those were the most like important and like I could discuss them the best out of any of the different ones that I saw.
Okay, your second question is, what advice would you have for other researchers who consider this topic?
Advice I would give to them is dig deeper into why they're bullied, and I also was thinking about like different cultures to look at being bullied. And another big thing I would look at is, as I talked about like being more violent in the future, I would think it would be interesting to look at how those people that were bullied 20, 30 years ago, how they're faring now, and like if it like the study showing that they would become violent in the future, if that's like true to them today.
Yeah.